Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Global Office Hours. I'm Alex Tassetti. I'm a software engineer here at VTEX, and I'm going to be your host today. So we'll start as usual with our announcements section. And for this one, I'll invite Juliana for our first and only announcement of the day. Juliana, welcome.
Hello, Tassetti. Hello, everybody. Today, I'm here to announce an improvement in our campaign audience settings. So these settings serve to determine the criteria used to create a promotion targeted to one or more audiences, if you're not familiar with what we're talking about here. And until this point, you could only use the or option when defining campaign audiences. And now we included the and option. So this means that you can now add up target audiences, combining criteria to be more specific when defining the target audience for a promotion. And this is already available in VTEX admin's UI settings when creating a new promotion and setting up a campaign audience. And for you, our lovely developers, we've also added a new Boolean parameter called isAndOperator in these endpoints from our promotions and taxes API that you can see on the screen. And to make it a little bit more tangible, let's give an example of what we're talking about here. So let's suppose your store is in the fashion industry and you wish to create a campaign audience defined by shoppers who buy from the shirts category and another one for shoppers who buy from the shoes category. And if you set up the Boolean as true in the API, all shoppers who buy pants and shoes will become your campaign audience, meeting both criteria. And if you associate this campaign audience to a promotion, these shoppers can get discounts or other benefits that you choose. And we have docs about the admin settings and also API calls, and you can check that out in our release notes in our changelog.
All right, that's very cool. So do they need to do anything to get this new update, or is it already available to all versions released publicly?
Great question. It's already available, and our API reference is already updated with the new parameter.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you very much, Juliana.
See you,
and I think
everyone.
that's it for. See you later. See you next time. Okay, that was our only announcement for the day. But if you would like to check out other changes that have happened since last time, make sure to check out our changelog. It has all the information of everything that changes in the platform. Okay, moving on, we are going to go for the Ask the Community section, which is where we dive deeply into questions from our community website and try to give them or try to point out the answer or give more context to the answers already there. And for this one, I'm going to invite George to join me for the whole section. So welcome, George.
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Pretty good. I think we're going to be here together for today. It's just the two of us. So
yeah,
let's get cozy.
Okay, so the first question we have for today is actually a double trouble question. So I'll go ahead and move on to the part of the VTEX community. So what Luis Fernando is asking about is events. So in VTEX.io, you have the possibility of listening to certain events and using events to communicate between apps. So you can define them, you can fire them, and you can make sure you synchronize different actions between apps. And what Luis found out by looking through our VTEX apps GitHub organization, if you haven't checked it out, please do. There's a lot of good stuff there, lots of learning opportunities. He discovered this external promotion provider middleware code, and there they used these two events, the setup event in the apps app and the settings event in the apps app. So the apps app, what is it for? It's kind of like the core infrastructure for all apps. And these two events, as he quickly found out, are related to when you set up an app, like when you install an app, or when you change the settings for an app. And you can listen to those events to synchronize, what needs to happen. It's just like in Git, you have hooks like, and other places. Well, he was wondering like, hey, I just found out about these two, but there's no documentation about them. Are there any other events? What can I do with that? He started getting creative. And
I guess they're looking for specific more events in within this apps provider, right? Like the sender being the apps app, right?
Yeah, exactly. So on the code, he saw that he defined this on app installed and on settings changed, and they were defined by this, like the sender was app and the key was either setup or keys. It was like, okay, what other events does apps send? And that's a really important question because apps isn't open source. So he had no way of looking into the code and finding out by himself. But I did look through the through the source code. Have the special
behind the curtain.
Yeah, behind the curtain. That's how, like, hey, we have other events, but there are no events we can currently share. But they're really related to our publishing and linking flows, things like, oh, when an app is linked, when an app is published or deprecated. But I don't see any use case besides our own tooling for those. So use them internally to sync and orchestrate actions that need to be performed by other subsystems that make apps, VTEX.io apps work. But yeah, if you have any specific use case and you want to reach out and say, like, hey, I really need to be able to do such and such thing when such and such event happens, is there an event that can help me? Definitely reach out. Maybe we can help you. But for now, that's all we can say. Do you have anything else you'd like to comment about this one, Alex?
Oh, I guess your question, I think, is your answer actually is straight to the point, because I think it might be that there's a legitimate use or a use case for this, but it might be that using this specific event is not the way to go. And then we can understand, if we can understand the use case, then we can figure out if there's a better way to surface either that information or that event in a different by a different sender or something like that. So I think we would generally discourage using these internal events, especially because there's no guarantee that they will be the way they are forever, because they're used internally and not documented externally and publicly. And so I think it's somewhat risky to use them. So it would be better to understand the use case and what we can do to fulfill it.
For sure. Yeah, let's switch to a second related question, also by the Avanti team. They're doing a great job in the community. So congrats, Luis and Rafael, for exploring the docs and really pushing knowledge forward. So Rafael gave us some more context about the use case they were looking for in the app installation context. So he wanted to be able to install an app and then set it up, so to speak. So he wanted it to be like plug and play. He found that the same thing about Luis, that he found external promotion provider middleware. He was able to, have these events set up and settings, and he tried to replicate that in his own code, but he wasn't able to, recreate it. He had no success in doing so. He was wondering, wait, so is that something specific to when you install an app from the App Store, or is it something that I can do through the CLI? Or, I have only theories because I can't see it, the app's source code. So he's wondering what's up with that. Saito, who was a part of our team, he's now working elsewhere, but he's always super helpful at VTEX Community. He's guessing, like, hey, you should test it this way and, figure out if it really works the way you thought about it. But like you said, Alex, sometimes we overcomplicate things. Maybe there might be a better way. And I give an example from Easy Setup. That's an app that's used in B2B stores. The way they do setup is they just add a huge button on the UI that allows the user to really know what they're setting up. They have these checkboxes, and then once they install the app, they can click that button and run whatever code they want. And I mentioned, like, hey, maybe that's better because, the user wants to be aware of changes you're making in their store, like creating new things in master data or, deleting products. Some of these actions can't be plug and play and shouldn't be plug and play. And Rafael said, like, yeah, we do that. and he actually has a really nice UI for whatever he's doing. As a easy and intuitive setup, looks good. Congrats. But yeah, he thinks that some of these setup options aren't adding to the user experience, so he wanted just to make them quick and easy. And I actually reached out to the person who created that app, the external promotions provider app, middleware, and he kind of said like, hey, maybe there's an issue with the policies. So if you're unfamiliar with policies, they're like the permissions that your app has within the VTEX IO context. And there was one of them that was particularly important, he thinks, that is the Colossus fire event policy. So Colossus is our internal system that does a lot of that messaging effort, like the event firing. And if you're not allowed to do that, then you wouldn't be able to receive it. We were talking about this right before, right, Alex? We're not sure if it should be the fire or the handle or
I think I was looking it up, and I think that's the only one that exists, and it implicitly includes the receive event, I suppose. So if you can fire it, you can receive it, and I think that's how you would be able to get the event, by declaring that policy as well, because it implicitly kind of includes that other action.
Maybe we need to add some docs to like how do we fire events in general, right?
I think that'd be good.
Yeah, but he was looking it up and he uploaded the test. Yeah, so he had the policies. I'm not sure if it worked for him, but I hope it did. And if it doesn't, we'll keep up the discussion. But it looks like it's 99% possible probability that that's what he was missing, because the code
I wonder
it works, right? So
this is just a guess, but I wonder if there's something related to the fact that maybe only VTEX apps can access and read those events. So it might be that, but this is a wild guess, but it could be the reason why he's not being able to receive them. But yeah, it's something we need to look into.
Yeah, for sure. That's something we need to dive deeper in, and I'll make sure to follow up with Rafael. But nice discussion. It's very nice that we could share with the community that events exist and there's a way for you to sync events between apps. Go through all that. Well, let's move on to the next question. And this was also by VTEX Community MVP, André Miani. He's always with us, asking great questions. And we took a while to answer his question, but hopefully it'll be still useful. So there's one thing that you can do in VTEX IO that's A/B testing. It's super useful. It's a way for you to route actual production traffic between two very different workspaces, production workspaces. So sets of apps, including your store theme, that are affecting the user experience. And you can actually route traffic according to a manual separation that you define, like I want 90% of traffic on this one and 10% on this one. Or there's an automatic kind of balancing until you win, and you kind of define a probability of which one is the best option, like which add to cart button is better, green or red or something like that. So he actually ran A/B testing in his own store. So he had this workspace A master, workspace B A/B responsividade. So he's probably trying responsive layouts. And he saw this data, and our documentation doesn't cover the revenue line. So we're only talking about conversion, number of sessions, but we never mention revenue. He was saying like, what do these numbers mean? Like, it looks weird that I have 159 for revenue on one side and 25,000 on the other. So is it really that bad? Is the master workspace horrible? I guess that's the main question, right? He was wondering whether it's a dollar amount and what does that mean and so on. And he actually mentioned something curious. I didn't find that in our docs, but he said there was something about Bayes theorem and how does that relate? So I actually went into the source code as well for A/B Tester, which is the app that allows you to do that. And when we're talking about revenue, what it does, it's always measuring how much actual order value was placed in your store every 5 minutes. So it's for 24 hours, it's kind of tracking the actual revenue. So you can assume that if your store is configured as dollars, that's the actual dollar amount. So it's 153 or 25,000 or whatever. And always something that confuses Brazilians and Americans. The decimal separator is the dot, right? So we're using the American convention, or I guess what many countries do. Here in Brazil, we use comma as the decimal separator just for context. But yeah, it's one thing that's important to note, and I think that's the core part of André's question, is that one of the ways that A/B testing can work here in VTEX is that we can auto adjust the traffic when you're testing workspaces. And the reason why that's important is that sometimes you have one workspace that's clearly worse, that's performing worse in the early stages of your testing, and you don't want to keep routing traffic to it because you're losing money in the end of the day. So when we're confident one of the workspaces is worse, we're constantly moving traffic to the best workspace, and that actually makes us more confident that it is in fact the best option, because if it keeps performing better with more people, then it's kind of like you have more data to confirm. So yeah, it helps the convergence of the tests go faster. So this is the documentation that I think he was looking at. It's super useful to just get more context. So this is what we're talking about, right? The end user is visiting your store, and we have something before the actual user visiting the store that routes them to one workspace or the other. You can find here, we're not, this screenshot is really old and it doesn't show revenue. So that's, I guess, the reason why he was confused, but some of the things are explained here. So you should definitely take a look at it and understand. When you're configuring A/B tests, there are a few questions you answer, and this is interesting. So in the beginning, you actually define the proportion of traffic directed to workspace A, workspace B. So it's the 10,000 is actually 100%. We're using integers here. So 9,000 means 90%. That's the initial proportion. And then it could auto balance. So this second question, it really is about when do you start auto balancing? And so what's the amount of time respecting this restriction? If you say 24 hours, you're always going to be respecting that restriction, right? So you're never going to auto balance, because A/B tests in our infrastructure run for 24 hours as far as I'm concerned. I might be wrong, but this is what I have off the top of my head. So yeah, back to what André was talking about. So to be very objective, yes, this value is a dollar value. This is also a dollar value, or real value, or rupees, or pounds, or whatever currency you're using. And the reason why you might see results like this is that you have, a clear winner apparently between those. But if you want to be sure, or if you want to test things like, I want the same amount of traffic here, and I want to see the dollar amount that each one of them is generating, you can just set it to 50% each at 24 hours for it to respect the restriction. And there'll be a fair comparison, in the sense that you'll see the actual revenue should be comparable or close to comparable. I added a bunch of math, which I'm not going to detail here, but this is directly from our internal docs. So we're estimating proportions. That's a beta distribution. Always when you're talking about probability statistics, Bayes theorem comes in. So if you want to be nerdy and dive into the math, you can always look through here and understand what we mean by expected loss and what we mean by B beats A. What's the conditionless probability? Did you know about that, Alex?
I did not know about that, and that's practically an essay they wrote there as an answer. It's just like there's of theorems and Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, heavily edited, by the way. There was a lot more, but we can't share all the
Yeah,
secret sauce. But just
yeah,
know that
I
we do a lot of study. It's not just random A/B testing, right? It's based on real science, and it should be
yeah,
useful.
yeah, that sounds pretty good. Very interesting.
Cool. So hopefully, Andrea, that answers your question and helps you out get the best results of A/B tests in VTEX.io. So now we have a few questions. Alex Matos was working with us, and he was actually nice enough to add the question in both Portuguese and English so everyone can understand. But yeah, let me read through the question in Portuguese. So, what Alex is worrying about is, can we do server-side rendering in Store Framework? So he's mentioning some SEO concerns he has. Like he wants certain GraphQL API to be, to fetch data before rendering components, and he gives a lot of detail. But since React does not wait for requests, and he gives a lot of technical reasons why he wants SSR. Tanish, also an MVP for the community. I actually talked to him today. Thanks, Tanish, for pitching in. He tried to help him out and understand different ways. But the reason why Alex Matos wants this is to be able to add some SEO functionality. So he wanted to add, for instance, the product collection schema, metadata for Google to be able to read through and understand. He's getting undefined in the source code, apparently. In DevTools, after the page loads, of course, that's client-side rendering. You can see the name of the category, the description, etc. So for now, he wasn't able to get to a final conclusion. But what I told him was, yeah, I need to dive deeper. But my first reaction is Store Framework was created based off client-side rendering. And we're actually working on a new framework called FastStore, which is currently in closed beta, exactly because we wanted to improve SEO, we wanted to improve performance, and we know now that server-side rendering and static-side generation these days works a lot better for those aspects, and you can use modern tooling for them in Gatsby and Next.js. So, but yeah, I actually read some of that in the internet. I'm not super React master or anything, but I found a really interesting blog post called "Is React Client-Side SEO Friendly or Not?" And I was surprised to see that some of the guys' experiments showed that Google, so for SEO purposes, Google actually touches your website first to get some of the HTML, and then it in a first wave, and then goes back after the JavaScript rendered code is done to actually go through a second wave. He did a small test, which was interesting. So this is a text that's always there, and this is one that's after the component is mounted, and both of them were indexed. But there's a big thing that's supposed to render just like 5 seconds after, and then disappears, and that's not showing. So what he figured out was, although it's not showing there, it indexed the 5-second delay portion, and it took 20 minutes to index the whole website. So yeah, it's hard to say, but very interesting to explore how Google has evolved in SEO. And even though it's not static, it's not server-side rendered, you can still get some of that content indexed. Alex actually answered me 30 minutes ago. He thinks that SSR is the only way that he can get the data he needs. There are 2 challenges. First, to create a JSON schema, and then to get a third-party resource to increase the conversion of search clicks. So this JSON schema.org thing, we do that in FastStore. That's fun. So we're already done with that. And about reviews, so product reviews, yeah, you definitely need to fetch it from a third party. So if you have product reviews, like using your reviews, you need to retrieve that, and hence you need SSR according to him. Yeah, I still need to dive deeper to understand whether that's required for you to index those. But yeah, we'll keep exploring. Good discussion, though. Do you have anything to add, Alex?
I don't have anything to add, but it's actually a curiosity that not many people know this, but my last name is Matos as well. So we are name buddies, me and Alex Matos. So I was a bit confused when you were referring to him for a bit, and I was like, oh, that's not me. It's the other guy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. Name buddies.
Name buddies, yeah.
Yeah, and talking about Alex Matos, he's also helped us this week. So
oh yeah.
Thanks a lot for answering. IDC Rulin asked the question about conflicts between image settings and site editor and store theme. So he's saying, like, when there's an image, two different settings. You have an image set in the source code for your store theme, an image that's set in site editor. Which one will show up to the final user? And Alex was very direct to the point. He said that, yeah, in that case, it's the one in site editor, so the latest version. And there's a nice thing called versions in site editor, and you actually can delete and roll back to the original content if you need. So you see it's saved in template, means it's in your source code, and there are other versions that come in through site editor. So yeah, you can go both ways. But the latest version will always be considered. And that makes sense, right? Because the whole point of site editor is to allow business users to override certain sections of your template and maintain it. If there was some kind of anchor to the old content, that would be really, really bad. But you can delete it. You can revert to an older version. There are many things you can do. Super useful. Thanks, Alex, for the answer, and IDC for.
So just I have a question. So when we revert to the old version, I'm assuming that we do it for that section specifically, and not for the whole page or for the whole configuration, right? So that version is specific to the contents of that section, right?
Yeah, I think every page has a version in the context of site editor. So you can change a banner here and then change a banner there, and for instance, each collection page might have a different banner, and that's how you differentiate between them. Although the same code is used to render all collection pages.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Let me move on to the last one.
All right.
Which is site editor doesn't work inside Minicart. So we're looking at site editor. So it's our CMS for store framework. And what Mahlon Passos here from M3 is telling us is like, hey, I have a custom component that shows one more element in the cart. So he's slightly modifying Minicart V2. And it works, but he's unable to edit it in site editor. So let's say he wanted to add, some stores have this, you need some $30 more to get free shipping, or they have a banner or something like that in Minicart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's not being able to edit it through site editor. And what I told him was, hey, we actually have a known issue. So known issues are bugs that we recognize we have, and we want to describe them as much detail as possible so that you're aware of them. Those are all published in our help center currently. We're working on maybe giving them more visibility, especially for developers. But yeah, some components not rendering on site editor describes that error. It's an intermittent error, so that means sometimes you'll be able to edit Minicart, sometimes you won't inside site editor. And that's the main case that happens when it's with the Minicart. Right now, we don't really have a workaround, and we don't have an expected date for this bug to be fixed. But depending on what you need, and I guess that's not Mahlon's case, right? Because he has a different component there. But if you wanted, for instance, to edit mini cart, the title or the color of the button or whatever, if you wanted to change some strings, you could overwrite the messages used. So I linked both the documentation explaining how you can overwrite messages, and yeah, so you can get GraphQL ID and say like this string should be that string, and then you could do that from some catalog translations, but you could also use that for different components. And you could go through some of the messages that are provided by the MiniCart app. So we actually have translations for all these languages, and in English specifically. If you want to change MiniCart, or these are all in the admin, right? But if you want to change go to checkout or my MiniCart or item removed, failed, whatever, you could do. You could use this key in the GraphQL API and change it without having to edit the source code. Or if you actually needed to edit the source code for some reason, or if you want to fix that issue, you already understood how that works, you could fork the whole repo. It's open source, right? It's public. So you could create your own MiniCart, although that's not what we want. We want our MiniCart to work for you, but if you have a way for you to solve it on your own, please do go ahead and take a look at it. Anything you'd like to add or ask about this one?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I just to reinforce that it's not ideal to have to fork an app to get what you need to do. But if that's blocking you, then I guess that's an option there, right?
Yeah. Of course, you can add a PR to our repository, and we'll be happy to review it, and then everyone can be happy with your contribution. But sometimes it's faster to fork, right? And you can publish your own apps, so it could be a temporary solution while we're working on that known issue. So yeah, I think
Sounds good.
We covered all of them today. So what are the events dispatched by App Sender? Receiving events when an app is installed, VTEX A/B tests, server-side rendering, conflicts between image settings, site editor doesn't work. Yeah, a lot of good work today, Alex.
All right. Thanks a lot, George, for sticking with me for this long. And I will move on to the next bits.
No problem. Happy to help. See you later.
All right. Okay, moving on then. We'll go to our... before that, I always forget this bit. If you'd like your question to feature in this section, make sure to add the office hours tag to it, and then we'll include it here. And then we'll give more context to it. We'll answer it live, show more information, links, useful links. So make sure to add that tag to the question in our VTEX community site, and then we will answer it here. All right, now onto the demo. This week, we don't have a demo planned, unfortunately. But if you would like to feature in this section, make sure to fill in the form, going to the community.vtex.com/office-hours-global. This demo could be anything related to the use of our platform, extending it, configuring it, or something cool you've done related to VTEX. It doesn't have to be live, so if you're not able to come at the time we've scheduled the office hours, you can pre-record it and we'll share it here. So if you have an idea or something you would like to show in here, make sure to fill in the form, and then we'll reach out to you and arrange the details. And with that, we are done for today, and then we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. So see you later.